guys, we're back for another episode. This video is going to be entirely about the window film on the BMW X5. We're basically filming multiple videos in one day, and Brandon's basically finishing up the hood of the X5. In a little bit, we're going to have him chime in about XPEL, why they choose to use XPEL, and also the properties that are beneficial for your health, and also your interior of your car, which is basically the UV protectant. And something that I definitely agree you should probably look into, especially if you live in a hot climate like South Florida here. So in a little bit, we'll get Brandon to chime in a little bit about that. XPEL is one of the films you guys use for the exterior of the PPF that we did in the previous video, and also is one of the films that you guys use for the window tint, right?
Correct. So XPEL is the primary brand of products or paint protection film and window tint that we use. So as far as their window tint line, pretty much with any of the window tints that we use, we typically only use ceramic-based films, just because here in our climate here in South Florida, it's pretty brutal, so we want to be able to give you the most heat rejection possible. So out of XPEL's line, the two films that we carry is XR Black and XR Plus. XR Plus being their leading or top tier film out of their category, which in my opinion is one of the best films on the market for heat rejection, overall clarity, as well as the actual color content of the film. So it's a nice even charcoal finish. It's not blue, it's not green like some other brands. For us it's a very neutral, even looking finish, so when it's installed in the car, it's very hard to tell that it's on there.
And one of the things that the different stages of film, it provides more heat rejection, right?
Correct, yeah, so that's the main difference. The technology behind each kind of film is a little bit different. So ceramic typically is gonna be on the better side of films, more because of how the film is constructed, optical clarity, not gonna have cell or like phone signal interference or interfering with your radars or anything like that. But then also just a really high UV rejection, total solar energy rejection. So it's going to be something that's going to block a ton of heat out of the car, but also preserving your interior. So the main point of putting some sort of ceramic or just window tint in general is, imagine the same concept like we have artwork. You don't want direct sunlight because it'll bleach the artwork or start turning white surfaces kind of yellow and fading. Same thing for your interior of your car. You want to keep it nice and cool. So whether it's daily driven, stored outside or stored inside in the garage, but when you're outside during the day, especially with our weather, it gets so hot. So we want to block as much heat out of the car, or a lot of the radiant heat. So when you get inside of it, it's going to be much cooler to the touch. And then at the same time, same thing, like the same reason why you put sunscreen on, during the day outside in the sun, it's going to help really protect the car from, lots of nasty UV rays.
And for majority of us, right, and a lot of the synthetic leathers in the car and leather seats, you need that UV protecting also, which is why you want to basically coat the vehicle too sometimes, right, with the seating, whether it's conditioner and obviously having the ceramic film, it adds a little more protection onto that. Because long story short, it's going to prevent deterioration from your interior and also help with minimizing your exposure to the UV rays, right?
Correct. Another thing to think about too is that, on a lot of these newer cars, the dashboard's gonna be a bunch of different materials, whether it's vinyl, plastic, or even leather, with a lot of extended periods of, exposure in the sun, specifically leather. Leather can dry out, can shrink, which means you can have pullback on your dashboard, which could lead to very costly, and expensive, replacements, down the line, especially if you have to pull a dashboard. So by having UV tint on there, it's gonna drastically help to preserve the interior and keep it so it's, helps minimize your maintenance long term.
And you guys have a guy named Ivan. Yes. Ivan's been doing this for many years, I'm assuming, right? Because I hear great things about him with his work.
Probably as long as I've been born.
Oh yeah, but that long?
Over 20 years, Ivan?
30.
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
30,
so
1993.
And he is your tint installer here at Hughes?
Yes, correct. So Ivan is our lead installer, and he's one of the best you'll find. So, just with any of our paint protection film, detailing treatments, anything like that, window tint is just as, crucial for us because, we do everything in a quality over, quantity aspect. So the biggest thing you'll notice is that with a lot of shops, the reason why there's a big price point difference in tint, which can vary from car to car, is the actual quality and time that we put into the prep, shrinking of our films, and the actual overall clarity and quality of our installation is huge. Biggest thing is, we try not to sacrifice our quality over price. We'd rather deliver a product that actually, looks great on the car and you can barely tell it's on there. Or some other shops won't spend the same amount of time in prep and you're left with a lot of, debris, bubbles, hair, lint in the film. And we really try really hard to, make sure our film comes out as good as possible. So for us, that's huge. So just same thing like, with the front windshield installs that we do. The biggest thing that a lot of people worry about is, hey, water inside the car, is it going to affect your dashboard? Is it going to affect the door panels? We really spend a lot of time covering the dashboards, covering our door panels, using these special soak ropes that go into the edges. So a lot of the water, instead of it just being pushed down directly into the dashboard or the electronics, we're soaking up a lot of that. So the main purpose behind that is, we want to protect your car, not damage it. So we do everything possible to make sure that, we're taking care of your vehicle.
Yeah, as you can see, Ivan's placing all those microfiber towels. And the main important thing right now that he's doing is the prep. And the preparation is obviously the key, right? We know that from applying the film onto the car, getting the car prepped for ceramic coating, and also now window film.
Correct. Yeah, and just like any other service that we do, window tint takes quite a bit of time to do properly. For instance, we get some cars that have Alcantara headliners and pillars, some that are more cloth, some that are suede, which is all different kinds of fabrics. And each interior we have to treat a little bit differently in order to protect it. One, not to get it wet, but then also because depending on the kind of material, like Alcantara, for instance, sometimes we'll have to sit there and tape all the framing and the headliners, just to make sure we don't have any lint or extra contamination in our overall product.
Yeah, one thing I also wanted to bring up too is that, as you can see, Ivan's working on the front windshield. And what I wanted to do was have more heat rejection, because that's one of the surface areas that emits a lot of light and also rays, and which is why he's actually going to be doing a 70% tint.
Correct.
Which takes a little bit of the ease off the sun, but where it comes into play is actually the properties of the window film, which is the high heat rejection. When I say heat rejection, could you explain a little bit more about that to people?
Yes. So heat in general is kind of comprised of a couple different factors. So tint is broken down into infrared rejection, UV rejection, total solar, TSER, or total solar energy rejection. So there's a couple different variables you have to look into as far as what makes a tint good. Just because it's ceramic, or depending on what brand it is, doesn't mean it's going to block a lot of heat. So those numbers, depending on what VLT, which is visible light transmission, or the actual percent of the tint, will drastically change the percent. So one of the big things too is that as you go darker in film, so for instance 70% is on the lighter side, 70% means 70% of light is able to pass through the film, which is on the lighter side. And as you get darker, between 70, 55, 35, 20, 15, or even all the way down to limo, which is like a 5% tint. 5% means that 5% of light comes through, which is why it's extremely dark. So the tint percent you use will dictate how much heat rejection you have. But the good thing now about technology with these films is that, traditionally with a lot of the metallic films, carbon films, or the older materials or older technology stuff, is that you'd have to go extremely dark to have tons of heat rejection. But now the great thing about a lot of these ceramic films is you can still stay on the lighter side. So for instance, some customers that like that kind of fishbowl clear look, we can stick with the 70 on the whole car, and you still have great amount of heat rejection, and it's going to be drastically better than some other films where you might have had to do 5% or 20% to even match the same kind of numbers.
Correct.
So those, the actual heat rejection numbers is pretty good, or pretty important. So for instance, all the films that we have here, because they're all ceramic based, are typically going to block 99% of UVA and UVB rays. Total solar energy, it's going to be pretty high. Same thing with infrared rejection. So that's all the important figures you really need to know.
All right, I know Brendan has a busy day or a busy night. So tomorrow we're going to be continuing this film because it is getting late. We're about almost 8 o'clock already, and we're still here. I know they're working hard. But tomorrow I have a question for you, and we'll talk about it when we get to that point.
Yep.
And it's something that a lot of people have this idea, what's the right temperature film, or what shade you should get, because you want to match the rears to the front. We'll talk about that tomorrow, though.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah. But other than that, we'll check in with you tomorrow, and that's it. All right, so new day, round 2 for the window tint. Yesterday was a late night for the team here. If you guys haven't seen the other videos about the process of getting this car all ready for my wife and also my upcoming son, check those videos out. In this video, we're gonna be talking about window tint, which you guys saw earlier. And we're gonna be asking Brandon about the level of tintness, right? The level of darkness of tint to match the rears that's factory smoked along with the front windows. So in a little bit, we'll have Brandon chime in and give you guys an idea of what to expect and what to look for. All right, so we mentioned earlier about the window tint with how much darkness you should go for the front, also the rear. I'm gonna ask Brandon of what he expects and also what can customers expect.
The big question people ask all the time is, hey, what tint percentage do I do with my car? A lot of that really depends on personal preference and also depending on the vehicle, whether it has what we call like a privacy laminate, which is like the rear windows on the car sometimes come tinted or like with a liner in it, or the front windows don't. So it really depends, I think, kind of on the car, kind of what your interior is like. So we have different tint percentages ranging everywhere from 70%, which is a pretty clear film. 70% means 70% of light that's able to transfer through first, and then we have everything ranging out from 70, 55, 35, 20, 15, and even darker. But the lower the number you get, the darker the film is. So for instance, 20% means 20% of light coming through. So that's a little bit on the darker side. Some customers kind of like having a light colored tint, like 70% on the whole car, because it kind of gives that fishbowl appearance to really allow you to highlight your interior. You can barely tell anything's on there. Or in case you have like a really cool leathered interior, such as like some sort of cinnamon or peanut butter colored interior red, and you really want to highlight it off without making it dark, you could do that. Some customers like a little bit more privacy and more heat rejection, so we can go with a darker film, but really just depends from car to car, and every client kind of has a different preference. So for instance, on this X5, we were talking to Ken about what kind of tint percentage he wants. So on this specific car, we're doing all the windows on it. For the front windshield, we only do 70%, which is completely clear. That way it doesn't alter any sort of visibility, whether it's daytime or nighttime. We want it to be completely clear and transparent through, so that way when it's fully dried, you can barely even tell it's on there. For instance, the windshield's actually done already, so by the time it's dried out, you can't really tell. So this is one of those cases that we were talking about with privacy laminate. So we do get some cars, for instance, Tesla Model Y, some BMWs, a lot of American cars. What will happen is the front windows doesn't have any sort of privacy laminate in it, which looks like it has no tint on there. And you notice on the back side of the car how the windows look darker from factory. So what happens in this case is the car from factory has what we call like a privacy laminate, which is like a liner built into the glass. And it basically allows for the back section to be darker. It doesn't really offer heat rejection, it's more for privacy reasons. So what we typically do with a car like this, where the front is clear and the back is darker, we can, in most cases, apply like a 20% film to the two front windows, which will even out the glass, so that way the front looks and matches as close as possible to the rear. And in this case also, depending on how much heat rejection you want, some customers literally just want the 20% on the front just to make it even, because they're more concerned about the privacy in the car looking natural all the way around. But the cool thing is with these back windows that we can actually put a clear film on top of this, or if you want it even darker than this, we can do that. So typically on the back windows of laminate, we can apply 70%. So for instance, on this car, the X5, we're doing 70% on the front windshield, 20% on the two front windows to be able to color match it, so that way the difference between them is going to be nice and even. So you look at the car outside or inside at a distance, it's going to have a nice even black appearance across the side of it. And then on all the back windows, we're going to add a 70% film. So this is going to retain the darkness or the sheen on these back windows. It's still going to match really well, but we're allowing the car to have extra heat rejection. So just because South Florida is so hot down here, we want to make sure the car stays as cool as possible.
I think Brandon was able to explain this thoroughly than me, so I want to thank him for explaining that, because I know a lot of people do have questions of how can I match this with my front of my car without, I guess, making a different color, having the front too dark compared to the rear. So the secret recipe is going to be what, 20s in the front probably?
Yeah, so for this specific car, 20. Most cars we can do a 20% on the front to match them. We do have certain manufacturers where the back windows are even darker than 20, and we'll just have to put a meter on it, and we can read it to get something as close as possible. It's really hard to make it 100% match, but it's within a few percent variation, and that's what we're aiming for. So like I said, every car is a little different. If you have any questions specifically about what tint percentage works better for your car, we also have these really cool color samples here, or typically at any point in time we have different cars with different percent readings here, so we can always show you a car physically in person, or between our sample booklets or these sample glass windows that we have, you can kind of see the difference in person. So, and I think too, some customers are kind of unsure about what tint percentage to go with. Some want dark, some want light, some aren't sure, but I think being able to physically see some sort of model or in person will help kind of decide that, and that way, just because there's no perfect solution, it just really depends on preference. But a lot of customers want a good balance between daytime visibility, nighttime visibility, with also heat rejection. Some customers just want it super dark, but then at the same time it decreases your visibility at nighttime. So I think it's kind of good finding that balance and finding what specifically works for you.
So Ivan, how long have you been tinting for?
Since 1990.
1990. So that means you have some experience.
I've done quite a few.
Probably, you've been tinting almost 34 years.
Yes.
Because I was born in '89, so.
I have done everything there is.
Good to hear. So
Boats,
it's,
planes, cruise ships, everything.
and then now my wife's X5. But it's good to hear that's being taken care of by Ivan. I heard you're a legend, right? I heard you're a legend.
Man,
He's a legend in Miami, right?
legend, Ivan Soto.
It's just life takes you along many paths, and I have been through a lot of them.
So what got you into window tinting?
It was kind of like a hobby when I got here. I'm from Venezuela.
Okay. What part?
And, Caracas.
My mom's from Caracas.
Ah, look at
Yeah,
that.
she was born in Hong Kong but raised in Venezuela.
Look at that. So that's where I'm from. And back in the 80s, when I was there, I came here in 1990, and I had a friend that he said he knew how to do tints, and I had another friend that wanted to do it. So I said, all right, perfect. I have this friend that knows how to do the tints, and these other friends that wants to do it. Let me connect them and get them done. And I ended up helping my friend to do it. And all of a sudden, hey, it was a hobby that
Became your business.
became a business and a way of being here in the U.S. because being self-employed, I came here in 1990, and then Hurricane Andrew came in 92, took the business away where I used to work, and I started on my own. And since then, it's been my business.
Yeah, you've been your own boss.
I've been my own boss for 30 years. Yes, sir.
All right, so I'll let you do your thing. I'll let you work your magic. I know these guys talk highly about you. And again, we're gonna let the legend work.
All right.